Hey, everybody. Good Monday morning. Jeremy and Joe with you here on WGR, broadcasting in both Buffalo and Rochester on a Victory Monday, celebrating a U.S. gold medal victory over Canada. And we welcome to the Wester Hotline a man we spoke to before the tournament, and he was kind enough to say, let's do it again, so let's do it again. Don Granato, former Sabres head coach, former coach of the U.S. national development team as well. Don, good morning. Congratulations. I want to say congratulations. A Victory Monday. Last week or 2 weeks ago, I called you a pillar of U.S. hockey, and U.S. hockey's on top. How did it feel when you watched them win?
You know, first of all, your show has been great this morning because I listened to it, and I got lots of laughs and lots of enjoyment. Just the fact that people are talking about hockey, and they want to talk about hockey, and that's what happens when you win and you put performances like that together. So yeah, watching it, having coached, a dozen or more of those players, and to see them, when they were young kids, and know, when you're young and you have them at the U.S. program, even when I was in Buffalo with the Sabres, you have them as young guys. And I said this when I was the interim coach. I'm here not trying to necessarily get the job and keep the job as the head coach. Like you're trying to win that game when you're in those positions, but you have young guys and young potential. So you have the hindsight as the coach of years of experience. So you're working with those kids at the national team program, preparing them for when you don't coach them, for when they're in situations of greater pressure and greater significance that they know how to handle it. So I watch it, with knowing the work that our coaching staff put in when I was with the U.S. program and had so many of those kids or in other situations. And it's a lot of enjoyment to see them handle that pressure and then to see their emotions. I think you just played a clip of Jack Eichel.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work that Ike's put into this, Jack put into this, and a lot of grind and a lot of, negative stuff falls on these guys' plates and challenges over the years. So for them to be able to celebrate together, I know means a lot because a lot of those guys shared a journey together when they were nobodies and no names, and they had to put the work in to even be drafted. So to be with them, so many of those guys before that, yes, very, very rewarding to watch. I'm very excited for all of them, as you can tell.
Don, how much at the development program is about, what do I say here? I was saying like teaching pride in the crest. 46 years between gold medals. I feel like for Canada, they expect to win every year, and there's this pressure all the time. You can see, I think, the players wearing pressure at the World Juniors and wearing pressure at the Four Nations. They play for a country that is supposed to win every year. And for the U.S., it's been about closing this gap and getting back to the top. And I wonder how you feel about the process of these players building this pride, gathering this pride, feeling like they are part of something bigger.
Well, when you're around the national team development program, that is a major part of it. Developing a confidence, self-expectation, conviction that, when you put that USA jersey on, you look across the ice and there's another country, whether it be Sweden, Finland, Canada, Russia, that your kids believe we're better than them. We're not intimidated because of that jersey. And that happens around the NHL. The Florida Panther jersey carries a lot of clout right now around the NHL and Colorado Avalanche. There's some history there, recent history, I should say. So that matters. And that is where the U.S. has, in that program specifically, has changed. It's changed the perception of even, if you think about hockey in the NHL, it was dominated by Canadians at inception. Obviously, it's a Canadian sport. So when the 80 team won, I looked it up this morning. There were 60 players, U.S.-born players, in the league that year that played in the league. There's 330 this year that played in the league. So you can see the difference. But what happened with the gold medal in 80, and then the guys putting the national team development program together in the mid-90s, and putting the best kids together in the U.S., it gave them credibility because those kids could go on the ice and beat Canada. So now most of the NHL management was Canadian-based, Canadian-born general manager, Canadian-born coach. why would they stop and look at the U.S.? They know the market in Canada. They know where kids come out of programs in Canada. So they naturally would favor them, as anybody would. It's their familiarity. So we had to build a program big enough to go on. And the first years of that national team program, they went and played major junior teams and won games. And that really moved us up in the draft. So guys that would be picked in the second round are now picked in the first round, and that made a big difference.
Don Granato with us on the Western Hotline. Don, how did you view the game itself yesterday? A game where, there are times where you're getting outshot and you fight through it, and also a game where your goalie ends up being the best player. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I feel like that's where a lot of people are arguing this morning is, how's a team supposed to feel when they outshot the other, but they end up falling because the other team's goalie just was unbelievable?
Yeah, well, Hellebuyck was unbelievable. He made his job easier. You saw the one paddle save behind him. His instinct, right? He made the first save. He couldn't find the puck, but he threw his stick behind him knowing, okay, I can't find the puck. This guy might have one more crack at it, so I'm going to cover something behind me, and it hit his stick. So you see his instincts. I thought the other area he was great was rebound control. So there wasn't a whole lot of second chances. When there was no room to put it. It was just banging it right back into him. That's a credit to Hellebuyck, but also a credit to the defense of the U.S. It looked like a lot of chaos around the net. Those guys were very calm, poised. They knew if they just stood their ground, they could eventually find the puck and clear it. A lot of times those goals are scored when you overreact there. You start panicking and move out of the way, and then it's a tap-in. So lots of poise by the entire group there. But, yes, Hellebuyck was outstanding and deserves the credit he's getting this morning.
Don Granato on the Western Hotline on the U.S. victory. Don, what do you make of the format? I just we had a caller last segment bring something up, and it kind of struck a nerve in me where I'm thinking about the NHL is a league. I mean, it's the most popular league. It's a very top league. But just because the NHL has its formats, we're used to those. It doesn't mean those have to be right. And I know a lot of people would prefer 5-on-5 overtime, and myself included. But you go to tournaments, and I feel like, as the coach of a the development team or whatever, like there are these one-offs, these tournaments you go to, and they might have different rules. So how did John Cooper's comments strike you about the 3-on-3 not being hockey?
Well, they put it in the tournament because in the preliminary rounds, for sure, because you don't want a team to drag out and get an advantage. Somebody had to play 4 overtimes, and then they play the next day, and there's a rested team they're playing against. So that's where it first came in. Let's face it, everybody would love to play and finish at 5-on-5, but the rules going in. I didn't hear John Cooper say anything after they won the game before in overtime. I thought Joe had some great comments earlier on it. But this is the tricky part about coaching. When you go, nobody wants to hear you explain losing. When you lose a game, I would always think to myself going to do a press conference, you sort of remind yourself it's like the Miranda rights. Anything you can and say will be, held against you. And so you've got to be cognizant. You just lost a game, and nobody wants to hear you reason. Now, you're going to get a lot of questions. Why did you do this? Why did you do that? It's a delicate path to navigate at that point. And now you've just lost in this case, the tournament or the season. Again, it's tricky to not make comments, and you just got to ride it out and get through that press conference because, again, a comment like that is going to stick. And that's why I say, I had to remind myself so many times going to press conferences, you can't say too much. And this is a case where this one's going to stick and people are going to keep talking about it. But, hey, 3-on-3, that going in. They had their chances. They didn't score on them. McDavid had a couple opportunities. Celebrini missed Tage's back door wide open a minute in overtime. And then on the final goal, it was a discretionary play. Jack Hughes poked the puck. Makar thought he could get it. Both players, it was a discretionary moment. Hughes won it. Werenski won a battle and got it back to Hughes for the goal. So we won a discretionary play, hockey instincts, by Hughes against Makar, and then up ice, Werenski won a battle against McKinnon, and it's in the back of the net. We deserved it. The U.S. deserved it, and everybody should celebrate.
Yeah, we had talked with you about the defense corps before. the tournament. And I think Quinn Hughes, because, obviously he's a super fun player, flies around the ice. The goal he scored against Sweden. Werenski, I don't know if his star profile is the same. Maybe it is. I mean, he gets a lot of credit. But him winning that battle and the pass across, like even the speed, I think, to get to that puck, like he's just a super impressive defenseman. I think the last couple of years he's like taken a whole nother level of his game.
He's so good. Now I had him for time at the national team program too. I'm very close with him. He's so fluid and so smooth, you don't realize how good he is. And again, if you talk about 3-on-3 and you can say, oh, it was 3-on-3, we lost. Coaches all the time talk about hockey sense. Jack Hughes poked the puck from Cal McCarr. Canada thought they were going in on a point-blank chance. Hughes outsmarted him, knew the time and space, poked it instead of him. And then the other area that you always talk about in hockey is you got to win your 50-50s. How many times do we hear coaches say that? You got to win your 50-50s. Your best players have to be your best players. Well, Werenski goes up ice and he beats McKinnon in a one-on-one battle and gets it back to Jack Hughes. So, again, we did the right things to win that hockey game. And those guys you mentioned, Joe, absolutely hats off to all of them.
What'd you think of Tage Thompson's tournament overall?
I thought he was good. He's in a different role there. They have go-to guys ahead of him, but Tage was needed. He scored a couple of great goals, and I thought he was extremely effective in the sense of in a lot of different elements. He went there. He had to play the wing and shifted to the wing. He can do that. If they asked him to play center, he'd be able to do that. So he's matured so much as a player. And when you get into that situation really quick, you've got to read what the role the coach is giving to me, which is a third-line winger. How do I get that job done? So I think as that tournament went along, the coaches were trying to figure out, okay, who can we rely on? They could rely on Tage, and by the way, he almost scored a goal. It would have been a big goal, I think, to go up 2-0. Real good instincts to slide into a pocket. So I saw a lot of maturity in his game coming out in that tournament and event. So a great job by Tage.
Don Granato joining us. Don, before I let you go, as they panned the faces, you said you had like 16 of these players: Jack Eichel, Quinn Hughes,
both Kachucks, right?
Yeah, the Kachucks.
Both Kachucks. Yeah.
Was there any other player you thought about as they're going through? Whether it's Austin Matthews, of course, like a number 1 overall pick for Team USA, like just players that you, along the way you cross paths with. That you thought of? Because I was reading an article where Jack Hughes was talking about the idea of winning gold when he was, young. He and his brother just dreaming of this moment, and here they are on the stage 10 years later or however long.
That's why this is so important, because there's kids at home today, young kids that are going to help us win in the future that are doing the same because of these guys yesterday. But one thing that comes to mind, and I know, 46 years since we won the last gold medal, that 80 Olympic team did so much for hockey in the U.S., and hockey is a sport. Really, it costs. I mean, there's a significant cost to playing the game of hockey. Financial commitment by the family. Austin Matthews comes to mind for that. I think his mom told the story they aired during the Olympics that she had to pick up a second job, and tie in the fact that he was growing up in a market in Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona. Fortunately, there was a hockey team there because. You could trace it back to because of Wayne Gretzky that there's hockey in the South. And he goes to his first NHL game as a little kid, and he says, Mom, Dad, I want to play hockey. Baseball's okay, but I want to play hockey. So they had to make that financial commitment, and they did. So now I think winning will help parents maybe say, boy, my kid, this is too big of a dream. I've got to make this commitment. So we have more people committing to our game and talking about our game, which is great. But he's one whose journey was pretty amazing if you think about it, to become the number 1 pick. And also a nice reprieve for him to get out of that Toronto market, which we all know is a tough one, and get out of the blame game for him and actually enjoy this type of success.
Yeah. It's funny, like, you're on a team that wins, and you're able to change the conversation. Marner scores that overtime goal against the Czechia in the quarters, and I saw a lot of, like, wow, Canada's happy, but here they had just said Marner can never show up in a big moment. He shows up in another big moment. So,
what people forget on that is the team around him.
Yeah.
You need depth to win in the NHL. You need experience to win in the NHL. You need health. It's depth, experience, health, and all of that. So, the deepest team with the most experience and the healthiest team is at significant advantage. And I'm not so sure the guys in Toronto had all of those ingredients as some of the others.
Yeah. Don Granato. Don, thanks so much. It's been great catching up with you during this international tournament. All the best.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Appreciate it. And all the best to you as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Don.
Don Granato, former Sabres head coach, former coach of the U.S. National Development Team.